And we started, at that time, punditry on TV. But let me say this, not many people are even aware that Kwabena Yeboah,
Engineer Kwabena Yeboah,
Engineer Kwabena Yeboah, the politician, he was so much into sports at the time.
Yes, I remember.
And hosted Sports Allies for some time.
Yes, I remember very well.
And he introduced punditry on TV. Many people didn't know. You know, I think he had to pick the idea from the UK. So he came down and felt that before matches, we could preview those matches. So we started it all around 1990.
Thank you so much for staying with us on all of our platforms, and we're grateful to you to keeping faith with us, and I'm glad to welcome you to another special edition here on Joy 99.7 FM and also on the Joy Prime channel and Joy News. We're also happy to be with all of our friends who are joining us from all over the world on YouTube, and this is the longest running program on this 30-year-old network. It's been 30 years of joy, and today we're glad to be associated with an organization that is also celebrating a similar milestone, which is even bigger in the sense that they've chalked 5 decades of existence. And I'm talking about the legendary and very well established Sports Writers Association of Ghana SWAG Awards. Just in case you do not know, the SWAG Awards is the longest running award scheme in this country, 50 years. And for 50 years, they've been running so strong and have grown a very credible platform that has been controversy-free and has been very, very effective in terms of giving big accolades to our sportsmen and women and administrators, and been the major recognition platform for sport in this country. Well, some have come, some have gone, but as we speak in the year of 2025, fate has it that the legendary Kwabena Yeboah, a journalist of many years who has grown an amazing track record and is also running one of the longest running sports programs on television with the national broadcaster GTV, is my guest today. The president of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana, Kwabena Yeboah, makes a return here to the special Joy Sports link for this very special edition after so many years. Writer, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lad.
I now realize why it rained during the week, because I realized that some surprise rain came, because we haven't seen Writer on this show for ages. Good to have you here.
Nice,
good to have you
nice,
here.
good.
Let's begin, before we get into the swag issues, let's begin with you. I mean, the other day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I said to him, look, it's a big privilege to sit with you because I grew up on your content, I grew up on your voice, I grew up on your presentation, and today I also find myself in the same space. And you're still running strong, wearing the nice suits and the nice ties, you know, every other Monday evening. This is something else.
Well, I think I must give thanks and praises to God for giving me a job that I love doing. I don't even call it a job. It's more of a hobby. I enjoy what I do. So anytime I'm asked this question, I talk about the fact that this is divine intervention. Because growing up, I never planned of entering journalism. I didn't even know about that. As an Nkoko boy, I didn't know what journalism was about. My entire dream was about law. And I was fortunate to have parents who lived in the UK. So my daddy lived all his life in Manchester and got me a school in Manchester. Tickets were brought to me. At that time, the ticket was 6,000 cedis those days. And I remember my daddy giving me £30 to pick bus from London to Manchester. I went to the British Embassy for a visa. For some strange reason, I decided not to go. My daddy never forgave me for that. But I think as a person of faith, God was preparing me for this job. And I do not regret at all. So for someone who I was so keen of studying law, suddenly finding myself practicing journalism, sports journalism specifically, I can only say that as divine intervention. And the
divine intervention indeed. But before you go into the beautiful thing, Writer, you know, I think you probably would have made a fine lawyer. I'm sure your age mates and your colleagues in even journalism say this to you all the time. I mean, I can imagine you going through the seasoned legal training traditions in the United Kingdom, you know, from the Middle Temples to the Inner Temples and Gray's Inn, Lincoln's Inn, and all of that. You know?
I can understand that. I remember having an interview with Kwabena Yeboah about 2 decades ago when he was at Radio Gold. And I raised the same issue, and somebody said, it's not too late. They can still go and practice law. But I think that we cut in different forms, different shades. And I want to stick to sports journalism. It won't be too bad. Also, adding the legal aspect. But at the end of the day, I think I enjoy what I do. But what many people do not know, I think a few people recollect my days as a print journalist with the All Sports newspaper. That was as far back as 1979, 1980. But
I was still not born, by the way. No.
but that was more of, I didn't know that I was even going to take it seriously moving forward. I just enjoyed writing for the paper at the time until I started taking it seriously. And then I joined a paper called Sports and Lotto. That would be around 1980, 81. And then I founded the Guide, Sports Guide, which metamorphosed into Daily Guide. And then set up my own newspaper, the Africa Sports, for a very long time until it fizzled out. Now you don't find any sports paper on the market. It's a long story. The electronic media is taking over. And then I transitioned from the print media to the electronic, specifically GBC. And it's a reason during the Sports Award, this President's Award is going to a personality who will be chucking 90 years on the day, Henry Attoh. We call him Coach. He, in quote, discovered me and discovered quite a number of us. So I used to play table tennis every afternoon at the Accra Sports Stadium when he came there.
Dramani Hall. Yeah.
That's Dramani Hall. And decided he needed me on TV. I wasn't too sure whether I was cut for that job. So I had to go and speak to Lotin Akayesu, who was then the FA chairman at the time. And I said, I wasn't too sure whether I could do it. And he encouraged me to go there. So Henry Attoh at that time, in quote, discovered quite a number of us. So Moses Formani was brought on board. Kwakufu Swasari was brought on board. Comrade Japan was brought on board. Papa Pencil was brought on board. And Safa Bebrese, may his soul rest in peace. So Henry Attoh Coach discovered all of us at that time.
Wow.
And we started at that time punditry on TV. But let me say this, not many people are even aware that Comrade Japan,
Engineer Kwabena Yeboah,
Engineer Comrade Japan, the politician, he was so much into sports at the time.
Yes, I remember.
And hosted Sports Allies for some time.
Yes, I remember very
and
well.
he introduced punditry on TV. Many people didn't know. I think he had to pick the idea from the UK. So he came down and felt that before matches, we could preview those matches. So we started it all around 1990. And then he was the host at the time. No, he was not. It was Edward Fachi, because those days, in quote, young people were not allowed to host programs. So Eddie Fachi hosted the program. Brilliant, brilliant leader, Eddie Fachi. So Comrade Japan was on the panel together with myself, Carl Tufo, and Papa Pencil. And shockingly, Papa Pencil at a point was getting off the program because he had predicted Cameroon would lose to Argentina. That was in 1986. No, 1990.
1990 in
Argentina
Italy.
had won the World Cup in 1986, led by the legendary Diego Maradona. 1990, they were the defending champions.
Yeah, I remember the pre-match formalities and all the antics that Maradona did with the ball.
That's right. Against Cameroon, and Papa had predicted that Argentina was going to beat Cameroon. And we all know the
then
story.
it ended up 1-0
Then
against
Oman Bayak,
Argentina.
absolutely, Oman Bayak. And Argentina lost by 1 goal to 0. And Papa Pencil became public enemy number 1. And a whole editorial was written on him that he was anti-revolutionary, that he didn't understand the African dream, the Pan-Africanism, he just didn't understand. So he was kicked off the air. I mean, that's how far we have come. These days, people go on air and say all manner of things.
And they come back and apologize.
Freedom of speech, and for just predicting. And any neutral, objective, principled pundit would definitely go for Argentina, who are the defending champions. Not just defending champions. Maradona was at his peak.
Exactly.
With Buruchaga and all those players. Who was ever going to predict for Cameroon? But he was kicked off the program for making that prediction. We continued, we protested, but nobody would listen to us, but we continued. And Kwabena Yeboah was absolutely brilliant until he left the scene around 1994 when I took over on Sports Highlights. And this
Here
is where
we
find
are.
ourselves, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. The upward surge of new media, social media, digital journalism, and how it has fizzled out some forms of, sports news consumption and all of that. That also, I mean, we're just reflecting on it off air, and it's just amazing the way things are done so differently, and now news is consumed faster because of technology, and you see digital media at the heart of it.
The times have changed. I mean, if you talk about SWAG, for instance, SWAG, when I joined SWAG, we're no more than 20 people, the whole nation, because basically the print media. And if you didn't belong to the print media, of course, you were not even allowed. You didn't have that space. Of course, we had the likes of Joe Latte, who was at GBC, and Alabi, local. He was like running commentary at GBC. Just a few of them. But it was basically the print media. And then over time, we had the proliferation of radio, which changed the dynamics of journalism in this country. And then social media, new media. So the terrain is completely changed. And there's a reason you don't find any sports paper on the market as we speak. Because it's either online or there are bloggers. Times have completely changed. And I think, well, the world is not static, so you move with the times. And we accept that. So SWAG itself is gone through all those phases. So instead of SWAG members just coming from the print media, now it's more of the electronic chaps. And the face of SWAG is completely changed.
Well, if you just joined us, we're having this conversation with the legendary Kwabena Yeboah. He is the president of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana. We're celebrating 50 years of the SWAG Awards. It's the longest running awards platform across board in our country, Ghana. And in a couple of days, the whole nation will come together with dignitaries from all over the world, including the president of AIPS. He will be joining us here as we give honor to whom deserve it, over the last sporting year and also over this 5-decade period. So it's a big milestone for Kwabena Yeboah personally and also for the whole organization. But we're starting off the conversation digging into the past years and how sports journalism has evolved. Kwabena Yeboah has been telling us about the experiences of the national broadcaster, his life in print before zooming in there. And it's just amazing how, this conversation about new media and how it has changed the face of things and, changed the way we even consume news has happened. Writer, the bit about professionalism and how it looks like new media may have brought with it that baggage which we all need to deal with. Because back in the time when you were active in print, and anybody who did print before doing, broadcasting and other forms of electronic would go through several processes before the newspaper goes to bed.
That's correct.
Now somebody has a phone. They come. They write a bit of wrong grammar with some wrong designations in there, and they put these videos out there, and that is not to say that's not what's happening every day, but we have these incidents and all of that. And it looks like that's baggage that has been brought with new media.
Well, it's a challenge the sports writers have decided to confront. And only a couple of days ago, the president of the AIPS, which is the umbrella body of all sports journalists around the world, Gianni Mello, who will be coming to grace the occasion for us next week, he raised the issue, the importance of bringing in all the content creators into SWAG for some form of training, because it's very, very important. As you rightly pointed out, in the past, we all went through very, very rigorous training. And apart from that, you had your editors, your sub-editors, so your write-ups even went through scrutiny before the final consumption by the consumer. So it was a very, very strict regimen. Times have changed. And it doesn't mean that we no longer have the professionals. I think journalism, sports journalism these days, is more dynamic, is more vibrant, but there are excesses we have to deal with. And that is what SWAG intends to do. Because of that, we have encouraged all these content creators to belong to SWAG, so we take them through training processes. For example, when I took over as the SWAG president, one of the things I said was that my tenure was not going to be defined by just the award ceremony year after year, by the training programs that we offer, our members. So we started by roping in all members across the nation. In the past, sports journalists were just limited to Accra. So we had to go on a nationwide campaign. We've been to the Ashanti region to organize the Ashanti group. We've been to the Eastern region. We've been to the Northern region, the Western region, the Central region. So we have branches across the length and breadth of this country. And what we have done is to organize training programs, and we've been privileged to have the support of the corporate world. So we've been to all these regions to organize training programs. We've had the likes of Kweku Sichado to educate us about the tenets of the profession, about press law. We've had the former president of the Ghana Bar Association, Shabuafo, educate us. So every now and then we have lecturers and personalities to come and lecture us as we organize programs. Not just that, the AIPS has programs for journalists. So quite a number of our members have benefited from these programs. A number of them have been to Brazil, to Uruguay, to Argentina, to England, on a regular basis to bring them to that international level, because times have changed and we cannot allow those who haven't had that training, we can't leave them behind. So it's a major, major responsibility and a vision that I carry, and I'm sure together with our leadership, to ensure that we bring everybody on board. It's not going to be easy because, as you rightly said, because it's a voluntary organization, it's not everybody who has decided to join us. So we keep encouraging. And in the next few days, for instance, we've scheduled a meeting with the content creators to bring them on board. So when our international president comes to town, we intend meeting them to ensure that there is a strong level of discipline and dedication, commitment to the profession, so that you don't just believe that you're just there to create content, but it comes with responsibilities. Because without that kind of training, not many of the members are even aware of what constitutes the press law. So what constitutes libel? What constitutes slander? Many of the guys, because of the lack of training, do not even know. So they go on air, for instance, and call somebody a thief, that you're a thief. They don't even know that the onus of proof lies on you. You can call somebody a thief, but once you are dragged to court for defamation, for slander, it's not a question of whether you think you are right or wrong. The onus of proof is on you. But I'm sure that some of these excesses are committed because they do not understand, what it takes to really get out there as a top professional. So that responsibility lies squarely on our shoulders to ensure that we bring everybody on board for that level of training locally and internationally.
Well, talk about those who have trained. I mean, you mentioned good old Kweku Sichado. Kweku Sichado is also one of the voices that have contributed greatly to our platforms here at the Multimedia Group. And he used to say something in some of his interviews. He used to say this about you, that when in the early years, anytime he wanted to have big interviews and mention, he wanted to interview the, quote unquote, the big people in our society, he had you to hold his hand and take him along. And that brings me to the question of the fulfillment that one gets from sports journalism, because you have rightly mentioned that law was something you projected and it beckoned at several stages of your life, but you decided to stay focused in sports journalism. The element of networking that sports brings you and fulfillment, tell us your version of it.
It's quite interesting. Kweku keeps telling this story.
Yeah.
And I think on an occasion he went to Legon for a lecture, and he was asked who inspired him in his life as a journalist. And he said many of the students were expecting to mention some high-profile names abroad. So when he mentioned my name, they were a bit surprised. And he came and told me how I would hold his hand to personalities like Asad Mala, Mr. Kotoko, and then Jay Kufuor those days, because Jay had become the chairman of Asante Kotoko those days. So talking about networking, I remember His Excellency Jay Kufuor, former president of this land, when he decided to he had a vision of becoming the president. And he also loved football, and then decided to head Asante Kotoko. But I do know that his knowledge at the time probably wasn't very, very deep. And I really, really had great affection for the gentle giant. I really, really loved him. I've loved him all my life.
We all do.
So absolutely. I mean, such a wonderful personality.
Yes, exactly.
So I would go to his house almost every single morning to talk to him about sports and what he was getting into. And he really, really appreciated the advice I was always giving him. So he decided, as a chairman of Kotoko at the time, almost all his trips had to be with him, because he needed me very, very closely to continue advising. I remember on one of such trips, we went to Algeria, Kotoko against JSK. And when we got there and he saw the infrastructure of JSK, their hotels, their training facilities, their pitches, he came to me and asked me, it's like, Kwabena, where will I know ball? And now, where will you meet you? You see, we'll be playing them. We can handle them. And that day we lost by 2 goals to 0. We won the first leg by 1 goal to 0, so
they had to progress. Yes.
And we went to places like Sierra Leone, like Morocco. And it was during his time that I remember he organized what we call the chartered flight. One went to Morocco. I'm sorry, but we traveled with about 100 fans. Only one returned, unfortunately. So I had a good time with him. And I learned a lot from the former leaders, especially of Asante Kotoko. And I remember a personality like Sims Kofi Mensah, who took over the team from 1980 to 1983 when Yeboah took over. I was always in his office. What many people didn't know was that the great Ohinijan, he had contracted Ohinijan to his office, and Ohinijan was helping him run Kotoko. Not many people did know. And it was such a successful reign. Before he took over, hearts were constantly beating Asante Kotoko. Those were the days of the fearsome fivesome. And I was privileged. I was then a ball boy of Asante Kotoko from 1974-75 to about 1978-79, when hearts were constantly beating Kotoko, the fearsome fivesome, the great Mohamed Polo, Anna Seidu, Mamakwa, Robert Hammond, Peter Lamte. Kotoko simply could not stand them. Constantly they were beating Kotoko until Sims took over and decided to change the face of the club. So he roped in players like Gigi from Acotex, Ohine Basian, and then he brought people like Opokunti, Albert Asase, Kofi Badu, Francis Kumi. And that was the first time, after that recruitment, was the first time Hearts lost by 3 goals to Kotoko at Accra Sports Stadium. And that is how Kotoko started winning the league from 1980, 81, 82, and won the cup in 1983, 84, won. So I've had that relationship with them. I had a relationship with almost every Kotoko leader. And so I learned a lot because I would go to them, find out precisely what they were doing and how they were running the club, the difficulties, how they were resolving problems. So I wasn't just writing, but in the process, I was also learning. And then there were some coaching courses I also attended. I remember when Maroski came to Ghana to handle the likes of Osam Dudu and Coach Afrani, I would sneak through and go and sit in class and learn some of these things. It's always important because as a sports journalist, it's important to understand the game, understand what you are reporting, so that you have a comprehensive idea of precisely what you are doing. So it's not a question of, it's not a part-time job, it's a professional job. And you must carry the game to your listeners or your viewers for them to appreciate what you're doing. If you don't have a deep understanding of the sport, you will be reporting. So clearly, when a goal has been scored, because of a lack of comprehension, for example, of Law 11, which is the offside law, which is called the most controversial law, you misinterpret it, mislead people, and get everybody into trouble. So it's always important, as an advice I'll give sports journalists, the emerging ones, that once you decided to be a sports journalist, you have to get to the basics, to the grassroots, and learn the fundamentals, have a total grasp of it, so that when you speak, people would know that this is from a credible source. When you write, people would know that this is from a credible source, and will start quoting you. That is the way to go.
Interesting. Well, if you just joined us, we're here with Kwabena Yeboah, the president of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana, on this special one-on-one as we reflect on the journey of the organization that he leads, the body in charge of all sports journalists here in Ghana, where we're just about to mark the 50th milestone of the Sports Writers Association SWAG Awards ceremony, and that comes up in a couple of days. We'll be getting into the details of all of that later on. But let's also now focus on, you know, the other sides of work as a journalist. I mean, you've traveled the world. You have seen everywhere by courtesy of what you do, and you've spoken about getting close to leadership. And you know, what is the difference if you decide to specialize in sport as against other genres of journalism or other areas of specialization, like maybe mainline news, hard, you know, line news, business, you know, maybe other forms of, you know, of a journalism? What is the advantage that you feel sports journalists have that maybe they do not realize themselves?
Well, I think basically it's an enjoyable profession, the kind of profession that links you to the rest of the world. And as I keep saying, it's something that you enjoy and at the same time get paid for that. So, for example, the upcoming World Cup, quite a number of personalities would want to be in the USA, Canada, Mexico. They would want to, but you have to pay. It costs a lot of money. As a sports journalist, you're going there on the ticket either of your company or your sponsor, and you're enjoying the sport, something that others are paying for, and you are just going there. And I think the world gives so much recognition to sports journalists all over the world. So, for example, for a number of international competitions, by virtue of the accreditation, a lot of courtesies are extended to you. So, as you rightly pointed out, I've been privileged to be at a number of international tournaments. The 1992 Barcelona Olympics, for instance, by virtue of having the accreditation, for example, all your transportation costs are handled by the host, even in terms of feeding, in terms of ticketing. Every facility is offered you, you know, at that world stage. And I must say, and pay, respect the role that world leaders have played in bringing sports journalism this far. And I'm always quick to point out what Sepp Blatter, for instance, has done for sports journalists, especially in Africa. Because until it came on the scene, there was a notion that African sports journalists couldn't match their European counterparts. So you and I know, I find it extremely offensive that we have an Africa Cup of Nations and all commentary is run by Europeans, as though there are no commentators in Africa. There is no way you're going to have an African commentator running commentary
On the Euros.
on the Euros. It won't happen. It had to take the intervention of Sepp Blatter to put a halt to that. After his exit, we're back to square one. You know, so Sepp Blatter, if you remember, in 2010, decided that the World Cup should go to Africa. Before that, you know, South Africa had contested Germany
And had lost.
for the 2006
Yeah.
World Cup. So what did Blatter do? He had to institute what he called a rotation policy to ensure that no continent would contest with the African continent. You know, so the 2010 World Cup was reserved for Africans. Morocco contested South Africa. Eventually, South Africa won. After South Africa have won, because of the disrespect they still have for Africa, they insisted Africa could not host the World Cup and continually pestered Blatter with what Plan B was going to be. They suddenly spoke about the fact that there was so much crime in South Africa, they couldn't host it, and what was Plan B? And Blatter continued to tell them, South Africa is Plan A, South Africa is Plan B, South Africa is Plan C, and ruled that only African commentators should run commentary on the world stage. But because of the level of professionalism that needed to be met at that level, Blatter sent international commentators to Ghana to come and offer some training. I remember John Helm coming to Ghana. And then from there, he took quite a number of African commentators to Senegal for training. And after Senegal, they went to Marseille, and then finally in Paris. It was in Paris that I had the opportunity of joining the training. So the commentary was just reserved for Africans. They were still not convinced we could do it. And at the quarterfinal, I remember at the quarterfinal, they were so impressed that a team from AUB, that is African Union of Broadcasters, came all the way to South Africa to pat us on our backs and organize some form of a party for the team. It didn't end there. In 2014, he again insisted only Africans should run commentary. And that happened. So if you are privileged to pick this as your profession, I think that it gives you an opportunity to not just travel around the world, because that is not the main thing, but to strike chords, build that synergy with the rest of the world, build relationships around the world. And the beautiful thing about sport journalism is that wherever we find ourselves, it's like a family. So it doesn't really matter whether if you're going to England or if you're going to Brazil and you don't even know, you've never met any of those journalists. Once you get there, it's a family. You're accepted as one of their own. And lots of doors are open for you. And I thank God a number of doors that have been opened for me. You know, greats like Brian Glanville, who when growing up, I looked up to him, writing for World Soccer. When Ghana played against England, you know, at Wembley, I met him there, and he was 92 years and still reporting for World Soccer.
92 years?
92 years. And I was so excited to meet him. And when we met, I saw he had met me several times. So it opens doors for you, but as I keep saying, you must be professional and understand that the terrain comes with its own responsibilities. So it's not a question of just enjoying the adulation, but society looks up to you to be credible. And I keep making the point that as a journalist, once you lose your integrity, you've lost it. You must be so credible that when you speak, people must be able to quote you and conclude that once it's coming from personality A, I want to believe it. Once you lose that touch, you've lost it. So credibility is important, integrity is important, and you must be as principled as ever. And unfortunately, let me make this point. I've made this point a number of times. Not many people agree with me that our profession is not for money. It's not to make money. If you want to make too much money, you can go into the business world. Here is complete dedication and service to the people. It doesn't mean I'm preaching penury and pauperism. Of course you would survive, but I'm saying that if you want the big bucks, it's not what our profession calls for. Because if you do not sermonize along these lines, there are a number of people who would enter this profession thinking it's for money. Those are the ones who would bury principles and bury the ethics of the profession and completely destroy what our forebears have built over the years for us.
Well, talk about what our forebears have built for us. We have loads and loads of gallant men and some women who have laid the foundations for the Sports Writers Association of Ghana. Unfortunately for us, 2025 has been a very, very tough year We lost Mr. Aka Anthony, my former boss, God bless his soul. We lost, Mr. Ebu Kwanzaa, who, was succeeded by Mr. Aka as president of SWAG. I mean, and earlier we also lost the legendary Joe Latte. Joe Latte comes from the same tradition, broadcasting tradition as you, and was actually the first president of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana. Let's reflect on their leadership. I mean, we've had quite a number of, of strong men. I mean, we've had the Honorable Joe Agri, who was a former Minister for Sport. We've also had the Venerable Oheneba Charles, and I mean, it just is so refreshing, to look back and see the kinds of contributions these fine gentlemen have made to the organization.
I mean, these were extraordinary personalities. I mean, you talk about them with nostalgic feelings. What they've brought to us, what they've taught us, and what they've really, really brought to this profession. I mean, the great Joe Latte, for instance, the iconic Joe Latte, such a legendary personality. I mean, he was so committed to his profession. You remember the days of DK Poison, who won the world title the first time for this nation. He was running commentary at that time, and everybody wanted to listen to him. He carried the event to your home. They were so committed to the job. And, those days, a number of our teams were involved in the African series, and a number of people wondered how he got so used to the names of players from, say, Congo, Zaire at that time, and Burkina Faso, Upper Volta those days. And he would tell you that he spent hours just studying the names of these players. He would go to their camp, and this is several decades ago. When we went for the training in Paris, you'd be told that before commentary, and you know as I do, if you were struggling with names, you had to go to their camp to go and familiarize with the right pronunciation of these names.
Exactly.
So these are guys, I mean, Joe Latte, may his soul rest in peace. It really, really gratified my heart that before he passed, the AIPS honored him in Qatar before the World Cup. And it was such an extraordinary event when he was the only personality on the night with a standing ovation. And Joe Latte, long before the exodus of players started, he was poached by the Nigerians. So he had to go to Nigeria to work for some time before returning. Great, great personality. And we're privileged to have him as the first president of SWAG. And
I mean, he told me about the stories of Muhammad Ali, interviewing Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali sat in his hotel room naked, and he had to interview him. And, and he also told me about how the kind of technology that was used at the time, and how if your interviewer just went overboard and it went past the capacity of the device, then you had to struggle. And very, very interesting moments indeed. And then he told me about social life and how popularity got him so much, drew so much to him. I mean, he told me the story about the beverages we all like to consume, for instance, and Kumasi, and how one day he went into Kumasi getting ready for a Hearts and Kotoko game, and somebody just saw him and said, "Oh, send him 3 crates for starters." And it's just amazing. And we've lost 3 of them. We do know that one day everybody would go away, but we've lost 3 of them in a very short period of time.
It's been a very tough period for SWAG this year alone. I mean, apart from losing Joe Latte last year, this year, within a space of just a month, we lost our former president, Ebu Kwanzaa, and then also lost Aka Anthony. It's a very, very big blow for us. But as you said, only God, we don't have total comprehension of the world. Only God understands. And one day, everybody will just leave and meet their creator. But what they have left us, the legacy they have left us, is a level of professionalism, the level of principles, and the integrity they carried. All the personalities we're talking about, one thing just ran through their lives, and that is total commitment and dedication to their work as sports journalists. I mean, And it runs through. Check, none of them was a very wealthy personality, but they were wealthy in terms of their character and their conduct and what they brought to society. That is the legacy they've left us. And we take a great deal of inspiration from them on daily basis. Joe Latte, Willie Kwateng are taking over after Joe Latte before Hinba Charles took over, ran the association for over a decade, and Joe Agri took over for over a decade before Ebo Kwanzaa, then Akanthony, and then yours truly. So we are inspired by the fact that they are resting peacefully, the bosom of the Creator, but their works and legacies would never be forgotten.
You mentioned integrity. You've mentioned integrity in this conversation quite a bit, and it's something we all run by. I mean, personally, from my family value background, I rest very heavily on integrity. It's one of my biggest principles and one of the biggest foundations on which I've grown my person and walked in this space. Now, tell me about your journey, and for that matter, the journey of a modern sports journalist, and how you have to, what you have to deal with in terms of keeping your integrity up there and ensuring that no storm whatsoever, or no challenge, or no confrontation wanes it or shakes its foundation.
It could be quite tempting because the nature of the job is that every now and then you have to step on toes. And every now and then people have to appeal to you to either drop stories or doctor stories because everybody wants to look good in the eyes of the public. That is where your integrity comes in, because so far as journalism is concerned, it's nothing but the truth. You must be absolutely truthful. Whatever you put out there must not be doctored. And so it can be quite challenging because, as somebody will tell you, the journalism in you does not take away the humanity in you. So as you start growing, you have friends in the system, you build friendship, you build acquaintances. So you get a story that hinges on a friend, and you have to publish the story. It's not sometimes easy when there's that level of negativity. And that is where you have to be very, very strong. And again, the element of bribery and corruption. Because journalists are not paid very well in this country, journalists in this country are some of the poorest paid. It's such a shame that journalists in this country are earning 500 cedis per month. And I say this on authority.
I see.
It's so shameful. So it's very, very tempting when you have to do a story and somebody flashes some 3,000, 4,000 in your face, ask you to either drop the story or doctor it. And it's very, very unfortunate because the media landscape has changed a great deal. There are all manner of interests, especially from the political angle. We have a number of politicians who have set up their own radio stations, or they have set up their own political newspapers, and are running their own narrative, which may not necessarily represent the truth or the reality. And journalists are employed to work, within this corporate outfit. And you're supposed to go with that narrative. My advice is, you stick by the truth or you resign. Because at the end of the day, it is your image and your personality which is at stake. And if you're going to just, perform according to the whims and caprices of the employer, you completely destroy your image. And that is where I think the GJA has a big responsibility to play, all of us, the swag. And it's the reason there is this strong issue about whether journalism is a profession or it's a hobby. Because don't forget that other professions, you need a license to operate. You cannot practice as a legal practitioner without going through the course. That is, in Ghana we call it Makola. It's not possible.
The professional law course.
Without going through, having a license to operate. And it applies to almost all the professions. You can practice as a medical officer without a license, or an architect without a license. Journalism is the only profession where practitioners can practice without a license, which opens the floodgates for all manner of negativity, you know. And there's a reason the framers of the Constitution around the world have ensured that they do not license it, because at the heart of democracy is freedom of speech. And there is a fear that once you start licensing it, it's going to limit the people who can practice. So it's a big, big, big challenge for all of us. And it's important that we find a balance between, although there are no licenses, we find a balance between true professionalism and those who join the professionalism, and how to ensure that the laws of the game, of the profession, are strictly adhered to. And that is why in these days you have so many lawsuits, you know, against journalists in this country, because many of them do not even understand what they're getting into.
I see. Let's talk about your personal experiences. You found yourself within Asante Kotoko, and you've never hidden your love for the club. And we've seen you on television, very, very disturbed. You know, we've seen you shed tears on behalf of the Black Stars. I mean, when we've lost games, and we've seen you, lose a bit of composure because Asante Kotoko lost and all of that. And this is something you've never hidden from anybody.
Yeah.
But tell me how challenging it is when there's a human side of you and there's a professional side of you, which are both meeting at a certain crossroad, and professionalism has to take over the.
I think my relationship with Asante Kotoko is quite unique. Unique in the sense that as a kid, my uncle played for Akotex, those days around 1973. And that was when Akotex beat Kotoko by 3 goals to 0. It was unheard of. So at the time, it was around 1974-75, Akotex played against Hearts of Oak in an FA Cup. They played it 3 times. And Akotex eventually lost to Hearts. And the owners of Akotex believed that some of the Akotex players had been compromised. So quite a number of them were sacked, 7 of them. And quite a number of them joined Asante Kotoko. So Thomas Kankam, who was a national player, playing on the left side, joined Kotoko. Justice Tapia joined. Boadu joined. Oinaba Siao also joined. Justice Tapia. So my uncle joined Kotoko and took me to Kotoko from Akotex. So I had no choice. And that's how I ended up as a ball boy in Kotoko's camp from 1975. Those were the, last days of Osei Kofi, who was in camp. Opoku had been brought to camp as the youngest player at the time when the team came at Tech. And I remember those days, Butchie was a goalkeeper. The likes of Dan Opong, Gordon Prempe were all there, Yao Sam. So I had no option but to stay with them. So I stayed with Kotoko from 75, 76, and I remember 76, Chenchahine, Adai Chenchahine visited the team in camp and wondered when he was going to be a regular player of the team. And I jokingly told him he was going to join us the following year. And in 1977, Chenchahine hit the limelight. And I remember Kotoko played against Hearts of Oak in Accra here, and Mirror at the time was the cover. He was Chenchahine Storms Accra. So Chenchahine took me as a younger brother and took me to the Black Stars camp in 1977. But you raised the point. How do you balance your affection for a club with your professionalism? If modesty would permit me, I've tried to do a very balanced work. And I say this without sounding boastful, because those days, the commentary box was up there. Every single match, you had to walk through the crowd to the place. And I think the crowd, in appreciation of what they believed was a professional job, and Accra was always full of Hearts of Oak supporters, but would always hail me as I walked through the crowd to the commentary box. What you have to do, and it must be a very, very deliberate, conscious effort. As you pick the microphone, you must completely dissociate yourself from any emotions or sentiments and run commentary as a pro. After that, you can share the tears. I'll give you an example. You know, when we played, Ghana played in the 2010 World Cup.
Sure.
When we played against Uruguay, I was running commentary and Siki Akono was a consultant, the summarizer. And when Nasamojan missed that kick, I still composed myself because we had gone through the training. So at that time, I wasn't a Ghanaian. I remember there were some write-ups in some of the newspapers how I was hard on Ghana. I wasn't hard on Ghana, I was just being a pro. And I composed myself. I remember Siki Akono temporarily just going off, you know, what had to be poured on him to revive him.
I see.
You know, in the commentary box, absolutely. And at that time, I was very well composed, although I thought it was a big blow. It was the following morning in my hotel that I started shedding tears. but
Because then that spirit
Yeah.
of being professional had then finally left you. Now you were you.
Absolutely.
And
I was human. And I can cite a few examples. So, for example, when Kodoko, I told you we lost by 2-0 to JSK.
Yes, Kabili. Yeah.
JSK Kabili in Algiers. After the game, a number of the footballers were shedding tears. Joe Debra, Frimpong Manso, Ampia, Papa Kong had joined us at the time. Everybody was crying, Safu Jamfi. I didn't cry. So Ibrahim Sunday was then the coach. You had Odum as a goalkeeper. I remember Ibrahim Sunday threatening Odum. I was going to buy a new goalkeeper for 1 million those days. You know, we're buying players for those days, 300,000, 400,000. But I composed myself. It was the following day when we got to the airport that I started shedding tears.
Wow.
I remember Jay Kufo wondering why I should be crying. And so, you know, at a point, Papa Wusuankuma was the sports minister.
Of course, I remember.
So we met at the castle on one occasion. And the president, Jay Kufo, was asking Papa Wusuankuma. So, Kwabena Yeboah, or ye commentator, na kotoko, ya show now. But as you mount the box, you have to be composed, you have to be measured. And I see through that thorough professionals. You know, Mark Gleason. I remember during one of our international competitions, seminars, I had the opportunity to commend him. South Africa, you remember, had played, I think, Senegal, against Senegal.
Yeah.
And Senegal, no, South Africa won a penalty. Mark Gleason didn't think it was a penalty. He thought they were being favored by the referee because they were playing on home turf. And he was very blunt on TV. And I was surprised. And I was full of commendation for him. So we met in Lausanne for one of our meetings. And I told the group how he had inspired quite a number of us and journalists across Africa, how he could be so professional. Because not many countries would accept that. Not many fans would accept that. That Ghana is playing against a team at a Accra Sports Stadium and Ghana wins a penalty and you question the credibility of that award. Not many fans are going to be kind to you at all. But that is the level at which you must operate as a pro. And we try to make a distinction between when you are in the dock as a professional and when you have to be human outside that. Outside the field, you can put on your human cloak, but as long as you are in there working as a pro, you have to be as professional as possible.
Well, you mentioned the experience of running commentary at the FIFA World Cup. Now, you were part of a league of special journalists from the continent who had been selected to lead this charge of running commentary at the FIFA World Cup. Obviously, it was very familiar territory for you. At the time when you were still very, very senior, anywhere you were placed on the continent or anywhere in the world, you were still very, very senior. Tell me about that experience. Running commentary. Personally, it was refreshing listening to you. at the time?
As I said, all credit to Sir Blatter, but for him, I don't think would have had that opportunity and that privilege of running commentary at the world stage, because the notion was that Africans could not run commentary at that level. Because that level is a bit different, and I must say that the training we had in Paris did help. But for that training, I'm sure would have struggled a bit on the world stage. The training was completely different in Paris before the World Cup. And so quite a number of us, thank God, were picked to go and run commentary in South Africa for the World Cup. We had 4 English-speaking commentators, 4 French-speaking commentators, and 1 Portuguese. And I remember before we went to South Africa, we had a set of lecturers in Paris. But when we go to South Africa, there was another set. And then they told us that the best commentator will run the final match. So when we got to the quarterfinal, the lecturer came to me privately and said, I will run the final. I was very, very excited. But let me go back a bit to the Paris training. We were picked and flew to Paris. We landed on a Thursday, and Sunday we had to go to the pitch to go and run commentary because the lecturers were there to assess us. And it was between PSG and Olympique Marseille. PSG were shambolic. They lost by 3 goals and all. It was after that the Moneybacks came and transformed the team. And after that session, we went to class the following day. And then the lecturer, we sat in press. The lecturer, we have what we call number 1 and number 2. That is the main commentator and the summarizer. And on that occasion, because I had missed the training in Senegal and in Marseille, and only attended in Paris, I was number 2 on that occasion. So when we went to class and they put in a tape, they would listen to the tape and assess and correcting and run commentary. So the lecturer one asked, are you number 2? You cannot be number 2, you have to be number 1. And I was very excited. So, but what gladdens my heart is the fact that at least Africans prove that we're capable of running commentary for Africans. And I was very, very excited. Unfortunately, in 2014, the whole of the African continent, only 1 person was sent for the World Cup. And I was privileged to be picked. I was happy I had been picked, but I was not too happy that I was the only one going. And then they had to bring some other Europeans to join me to run commentary for Africa. I always detest that. So I'm very, very passionate about that. I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I'm unapologetic about that. So for example, when there's the Africa Cup of Nations, and out of 24 African nations, I see 20 foreign coaches handling all these teams. It is not something I get excited about, because I am confident that there are coaches in Africa who can handle the African teams. The only difference is that the administrators who believe that they're capable of running the administration of football across the African continent have no belief in even the coaches. And I always ask the question, if running football in a nation is so tough, and you believe you're capable, you command the wherewithal to run it, you still don't believe that your compatriot can run the national team. And what normally happens is that over little petty issues, the African coaches are fired. But we are very, very tolerant of exploited coaches who come and take all the money, big sums, do not deliver. And what do we see? They're just recycled across the African continent. Check the last 2 decades, the number of exploited coaches who have been recycled across the African continent. And we are very, very quick.
Claude Rewa, he's had
over and over and over.
Over and over.
I don't want to be offensive by mentioning names, but I mean, what did they bring on board? We have coaches around Africa who are very capable, and the best example is that of Senegal.
Aliou Cisse.
Aliou Cisse, who was tolerated by the Senegalese national team
For 7 years.
for 7 years, and they won the Africa Cup. They could have fired him long ago. We are very impatient with African coaches, but very tolerant of expatriate coaches who come and take the monies and over little things drag us to FIFA. Our own cannot do that, and yet we do not encourage them, and we find the least excuse to just get rid of them. The same thing goes for commentary, and for that matter, journalism. I am confident that we have the men to deliver. I mean, look at it. I'm so proud of people like Gary Al-Smith, such an international journalist. The likes of Otiaji, Jean Pofoankra, before he left the scene to handle the National Sports Authority. These were journalists who were competing with international journalists and excelling. Worked at BBC across the world. So it's just a question of giving them the opportunity to deliver. I'm more than confident, given that opportunity, they'll deliver.
Well, let's now, zoom in on issues. Now, SWAG's platform is one that is always used, especially on the night of the awards, traditionally, to address major issues that are confronting us as a people. Now, you have been a very big advocate for, many reforms in the sports sector over these decades that you have practiced. And I know that there is a message that will come on the night of the 50th anniversary. But a couple of things have happened in the past few weeks. I mean, Ghana booking another qualification for the FIFA World Cup. I'm sure that it's coming as great relief, considering that we all are reeling from the pain of the low performance at the last World Cup and wanting to go back there and look like what 2010 looked like.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. First of all, you have a number of Ghanaians who have resolved not to even watch the Black Stars. That has changed though, but the pain and the anguish that some of the results, bring, the perplexity, the fact that people cannot eat after games, because it was completely unpardonable, to be honest, that we failed to qualify for the last Africa Cup of Nations. It was shocking to me because when the pairings were made, I thought this was a very kind group to us. A group that involved Sudan, that involved Niger, and involved Angola. And they were not only picking one team, they were picking two teams. And we still could not qualify. It was so humiliating, it was so embarrassing. It was one of our lowest points. And so not many people believe that we could even qualify for the World Cup. But I've come to believe that I think the attitude of a number of the boys towards qualifiers for the Cup of Nations is completely different from the World Cup. I don't know how to place it, but quite a number of the players, also because of where they've practiced their trade over the years, I do not think really appreciate the importance of the Africa Cup of Nations. Through no fault of theirs, they were not born here, either they didn't grow up here. So as Georgian Club said, it's a small tournament in some part of Africa. I'm afraid that could be the mindset of some of the players. Why do I make that point? When we played Niger at the Accra Sports Stadium in our last match, where we lost, shockingly, check the number of players who found excuses to absent themselves from that match. If it was a World Cup qualifier, I do not think that they would have come up with those same excuses to absent themselves from that qualifier. As soon as it's the World Cup, when the call is made, everybody's in camp at the right time. The mindset, the attitude is very, very different. So it would have been another major blow if we didn't qualify for the World Cup. I'm very, very delighted about the fact that we managed to pull through. When we went to Mali, I was privileged to be with the team. Not many Ghanaians believe that we could go out to Bamako and beat them. I do not think many Ghanaians believe that. We went out there and beat them by 2-1. And as we all know, we've succeeded in qualifying for the World Cup. Big relief. Players are suddenly very, very excited. The FA very excited. And Ghanaians are looking forward to a successful World Cup from a Ghanaian perspective, that we should not, as we did in 2006, move to the second round and pick lessons from 2010. Because I believe that we have players who are capable. If you check the profile of the materials that we have, I do not doubt at all that we are capable of running deep in this World Cup. And I'm confident, of course, the state will give that the right backing, and I'm confident that we will definitely make ourselves proud.
Definitely, there's no doubt about that. Featuring at the FIFA World Cup is always a big deal, and the conversations around it as well. So, you know, it's something that has raged on. I'm sure that you probably may have, you know, expressed your opinions elsewhere, but this conversation that doesn't go away about who should be in charge of the team, I believe that we, one way or the other, may have gone past that. But what did you make of all those calls at the time that, look, even if Attoh qualifies the Black Stars, we should let him step aside so somebody comes to take over? Because there are examples all over the world. They'd refer to Algeria, whose former national, you know, took over 6 months earlier and won the AFCON with them and all of that. So they think, okay, so let's just let Attoh step aside, let somebody else take over. How realistic were these?
I think these are sentiments out of sheer emotions. First of all, if you talk to me about coaches, my views about coaching is very, very different. It is very revolutionary. It is very unorthodox.
Okay.
It's not your conventional thought about coaches. I think coaches are important, not decisive. I've never believed that coaches, you know, make a team. My point is that the caliber and quality of materials reflect the work of a coach. It's not just a coach. The coach does his work. That is where it ends. At the end of the day, the players are on the pitch. There's a penalty to be converted. The player goes to fluff the lines. I don't see how the coach should be held responsible. And we see this all the time. I mean, if the nation had decided to get rid of Attoh after we failed to qualify for the World Cup, it would have made some sense. You don't fire that coach when he has aided the team to qualify for the World Cup. He's gained enormous experience. He's been there before. He's come back. He's learned his lessons. And don't forget that when there was the call to get him out of the job, that was when the FA decided to bring in Winfried Schaffer to beef up the technical team. I'm not too sure what the FA is going to do, whether they'll bring another head to beef up the technical team. I'm not too sure about that. But don't forget, we've beat up the technical area in terms of the video analysts, in terms of the medical staff. But if it's just about the coaching, I want to believe that I wouldn't say Attoh would take us to the quarter semi-final, but if Attoh cannot take us there, I personally do not see which other personality, once it's brought in, would ensure that we go to the quarter-final or the semi-final. At this stage, I'm being very honest with you, Attoh is like, in quote, like untouchable. It would be suicidal to get rid of him at this stage. And I'll give you an example. In 2005, when we went for the Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt, if you remember, Djokovic was in charge of the team. And we didn't do well. We exited at the preliminary. Zimbabwe beat us by 3-1. Baba Mando and others played in that tournament, where we used the black jersey and people accused the team of using that black jersey and all that. You know, and the call at that time was that we should get rid of the coach, Djokovic. I happen to be a lone voice. And on your platform, Joy, I said it would be senseless to get rid of him because we didn't go to the second round. Why? Because footballers play football, not coaches. Why? Because in that particular tournament, quite a number of our key players failed to show up. We didn't have Suleimantari in that tournament. We didn't have a Samojan in that tournament. We didn't have ACN in that tournament. John Mason was not at that tournament. We lost quite a number of the key players. And my contention was that, what was the coach supposed to do? Kusinyan Tachi was in a dilemma as to whether to retain the coach or not. And I advised And I hope he picked that advice. He retained him with the same coach. We went to the World Cup and emerged the only team, African team, to get to the second round. I'm sure if he had been fired at that time, another coach had taken over, the narrative would have been that, oh, it was a new coach who ensured our movement from the first round to the second round. So I'm not one who easily falls for these things. A coach is as good as the materials he has. Coaches are important, as I keep saying, not decisive. We've seen the great Pep Guardiola and how at a point City kept struggling. Your Liverpool, we've seen what's happening to them. In this country, for Kotoko and Hearts, how many coaches have they fired in the last 2 decades? Go and check.
Uncountable.
Uncountable. And the reason is that they are not learning the lesson. The lesson is not about the coaches. It's about the lack of quality materials. Because of the lack of strong financial backing, your players are living in numbers. You don't have quality and you are limiting everything to the coach and firing the coaches. It does not work like that. You know, so my views about coaching is completely different. When Kotoko and Hearts were doing well, so for example, in the early 1970s, when Kotoko were doing well, they had BK Duse, who was the strongest financier of the club. And that's how come they could even buy a player like Robert Mensah for 1,000 at the time with a VW to join Kotoko from Dwarfs. They retained the core of their players. So you had every single top player playing for Asante Kotoko. So they won the Africa Cup. Same thing could be said of Hearts of Oak. Unfortunately, they had to wait till the 64 Battalion before they won the Africa Cup and the Super Cup. But I'm saying that as soon as those set of players left, look at the quality of material we have at the moment. The rate of attrition is alarming. We don't have quality. And there's a reason Gold Stars would venture into Africa and be completely humiliated by JSK. Kotoko will go out there and be humiliated by WAC. You don't have, it's got nothing with coaching. You don't have the materials. And until you strengthen your financial base and ensure that you have quality materials who are able to stay in the country for a minimum of 6-7 years, you're going nowhere. Why do you think that teams like Mamelodi Sundowns are doing so well? Because Mochepe, who happens to be the CAF president, is a billionaire, not a millionaire. And he succeeded in retaining the core of the team over a long period and has roped in players from Brazil, from Argentina, and who supplied a number of players to even the national team. That's how Mamelodi Sundowns are doing well. So far as North Africa is concerned, they're able to retain their players over a period of 10 years. Hardly do they leave to the European shore. Hardly. Occasionally, some of them leave. But basically, fundamentally, they're able to retain the core of their team. And that is how to build a successful team. Look at the sad, embarrassing story of Asante Kotoko. Just as Amwa bounced on the scene, when everybody started talking about him and touting his credentials and talking about the fact that he was good enough to even join the national team, he's gone. How are you going to blame the coach? So when Kotoko plays a match and suddenly the attack becomes blunt, it's not the fault of the coach. So we must put things into context and perspective. Unfortunately for coaches in this country, we live in a country where every single follower of football believes that he knows better than the coach. And football is the only arena where patrons of the game, supporters, believe they know the job better than the coach. It's such a perilous job, and coaches are subjected to all manner of vitriol, to all manner of vicious attacks for what the fans perceive to be wrong choices or wrong selections or wrong substitutions. And as Ibrahim Sunday will tell you, you've never been in the dugout, so you don't even know how it feels. So my views on coaching is very, very, very different. As we speak, we have no option but to retain Otto to take the team to the World Cup.
Well, if you just joined us, we're in the final leg of the conversation with the legendary Kwabena Yeboah, discussing a whole range of issues. The last one that went by was that of the Black Stars and qualification for the next FIFA World Cup. Well, it will be so amazing to hear some more Africans and Ghanaians, for that matter, play very key roles in there. I mean, we could immediately roll back to Tony Bafo, Ghana football legend Tony Bafo, who has played the role of CEO for the World Cup final on at least 2 occasions, and that's as a FIFA General Match Coordinator. Kwabena Yeboah sharing his experiences with us, running commentary on some of the key games at the FIFA World Cup. Now, you know, recently the Black Queens also qualified for yet another AFCON. The Black Queens opened the way when it comes to qualification for the World Cup. They did it first, and then the Black Stars followed in 2006. Conversations about how the bonus conversation, unpaid bonus conversation, always comes up with them, and the seeming, and I choose my words carefully, the seeming discrimination, the seeming lack of attention, and how women's football can become a regular trophy-winning endeavor for us if we pay attention now.
Well, I think we have a responsibility to pay attention to the women's football, and I think the current FA have done tremendously well in backing women's football from under 16 levels to the Black Queens. The issue of bonuses, this idea of seeming discrimination, I completely have a different view. It is not entirely true that with the men's football they are over-pampered. I don't think so. If you talk about men's football, you talk about the Black Satellites, you talk about the Black Meteors, go and check the number of months that they are owed. As we speak, bonuses owed the Black Stars as far back as 1992 are still outstanding. I do understand that, so for example, there is this conversation as to whether they should earn the same amount. I think we'll get there one day, maybe not immediately. But I do not think that there is a deliberate attempt to discriminate against women's football. I don't think so. As we speak, as people even think that the Black Stars are over-pampered, there are still a number of times that some of their monies are outstanding. We all remember the case of Brazil 2014, you know. So it is not entirely true. But I think the nation should up our game. Up our game in the sense that we know in advance when the national team is going to play. So monies due them, I think that the process must be hastened to ensure that they are paid on time, to eliminate all the needless, unnecessary troubles over bonuses and all that. Having said that, I do not think that, and I would never, ever support a situation where members of any national team will boycott other training sessions or boycott matches because monies have not been paid on time. I don't believe that. I believe in complete sense of dedication to the national cause. And if you play at the national level, I do not think you play because of money. You play because you want to serve the national colours. Of course, it comes with its own remuneration. And those remuneration, the bonuses, must be paid on time. I understand. But if for whatever reason the bonuses have delayed, there must be absolutely no reason you should boycott training or boycott matches. It's a no-no situation. The Black Stars did that in 2014 when they looked us in the eyes and boycotted training because their monies had not arrived. And we all witnessed the consequences. They lost the affection of the nation, and immediately after that, their first game was in Kumasi. I witnessed it against Sudan. They were jeered and booed. And fans lost complete love for the team until in recent times when they have managed to qualify for. So it's an area that I do not compromise at all. We must pay them what is due them. We must pay them on time. But if for whatever reason is delayed, nobody has a right to turn their backs on the nation.
Interesting. Nobody has their backs. Nobody should have any reason to turn their backs on the nation. Now, let's also look at the conversation about other disciplines. Women's football can easily call itself another discipline because of the obvious infrastructure issues and general issues surrounding it. So we're looking at the sport of boxing, which I always like to come to. In a couple of weeks, we're going to host something spectacular. But of course, we had, a period where there was a lot of conversation about boxing because of the not so pleasant news. A boxer losing his life, and then a committee led by His Excellency Amaka Amatefu, they brought out a white paper which suggested that an IMC be put together. Fast forward, we're here. We are under the regime of an IMC which would wrap up their work next month. Let's talk about boxing, and for that matter, other disciplines. Athletics, which has had its glory days in times past. Some of our athletics legends are walking around, and I'm sure they've got loads of ideas which they believe we should be implementing, but we don't see these things happening.
Well, the good news, as you rightly said, the ban on boxing has been lifted. So we're going to have a sweet sport back. But let me say that I think as a nation, our attitude towards the other disciplines is a big joke. Big joke. There is too much pretense and hypocrisy. We pretend to be developing the other sports when in fact everybody just gone to sleep, folded our arms. Where is the infrastructure? How do you develop sports for the other discipline without the needed infrastructure?
Recently, before you continue, recently there was a video of the one of the Okankwe MPs, having, he organized to clear up the inside of the Azuma Nelson complex, which was now overgrown with weeds.
As I said, it's a big joke. I mean, you go to other jurisdictions who are very, very serious, and when they talk about development of other disciplines, these are very, very serious nations. So a country like South Africa, you talk about cricket. They won a cricket World Cup. Rugby, they won the Rugby World Cup. You talk about athletics, they are competing at the highest level. You talk about tennis, there are tennis courts all over South Africa, and they rank between the first 50 all the time. I'm saying we are joking. So let's not even pretend that we are developing sports in this country until a time that we get serious as a nation and really develop it. How we've had the Aframani Sports Hall for a decade, accommodating taekwondo, accommodating boxing, table tennis. It's a joke. Where are the tracks for athletics? We had a Accra Sports Stadium, which had the tartan tracks.
It got redesigned.
And for some strange reason, somebody decided that we could get rid of that. We lost completely. Really, years ago, every single morning you came to the Accra Sports Stadium, you met all these young athletes being trained, completely gone. And what was the excuse? That we could go to LWAC. Do you know the processes you had to go through to go and train at the LWAC Stadium? It's not the same.
And LWAC is now also beaten down. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. So I'm saying we are just kidding. Let's stop the pretense. I've stopped discussing some of these things for a very long time because I've repeated myself over and over and over.
You sound like a broken record.
Absolutely. I remember as far back as 1987 Africa, All Africa Games. At that time called All Africa, now Africa Games. Look, the hockey players, for instance, were privileged to be training here. We had an AstroTurf, but it was on sun-based AstroTurf. We got there only to find out that hockey was now being played on water-based AstroTurf. We didn't have the right footwear. We didn't have the right apparel for our goalkeeper, for instance. So we lost the first game against Kenya by 5. And for 87, Africa was going to send only one team to the Olympic Games in Seoul in 88. So what the Kenyans did, because Kenya and Zimbabwe were the top teams, they had drawn, they were beating all teams, so the eventual winner was going to be picked on goal difference. So what the Kenyan did was to bring us their footwear and bring us their goalkeeper apparel to ensure that we reduce the number of goals against the Zimbabweans. And we lost by 3 by virtue of that. Kenya picked the sole ticket to the 88 Olympic Games. When we play volleyball, we're training at Accra Sports Stadium on concrete. We didn't even know that
That volleyball had
now
evolved to
on
indoor.
wooden surface,
On
people were
indoor surfaces,
diving.
yeah.
We went there and we're struggling. It's been the pattern all these years. Nothing has changed. It's rather deteriorating. So as a nation, I think that we must be serious and come together and decide whether indeed we're a so-called sports nation and we have to develop sports seriously with complete dedication, commitment, and at the heart of this is infrastructure. So for example, tennis. How come over the decades, all our national players have come from Osu? It's very simple. Because this is where we have the 5 tennis courts, where every single morning these young boys come to the stadium to collect balls and in the process start training and become national stars. Can you imagine a situation where you replicate these courts around Dansuman, around Medina, in the northern region, western, eastern, central, the number of players you're going to churn out over a period of a year?
Right, you raised a good point because I do remember that in the Dansoman Snit Flats area, you have a court which I believe was constructed by then Member of Parliament, Honorable Ursula Owusu's basketball court, which attracts so many numbers. It's amazing.
Yeah. So we must be deliberate about this and decide that as a nation, we want to truly develop sports. And I'm saying that fundamentally, it should start with infrastructure. So if you want to start with infrastructure, for example, with hockey, you have what we call the Greater Accra Hockey League. Because you only have the turf here in Accra. That is why Accra is the only place where we have the league. If you replicate those courts in the other regions, we'll have those leagues, and then we can have a proper national league. Table tennis, where are the halls for table tennis? You know, the only reason, apart from Accra, where we're producing the players, Koforidua could bring players was because the chief, Nana Boateng, had a table at the palace where the players would go and play. And that's how the likes of Nana Yao, were all produced. So I'm saying that we should be serious about this. For now, we just pay lip service to sports in this country.
And a couple of months ago, the President John Dramani Mahama, launched a few infrastructure projects in the Big Push agenda. And Big Push is a special vehicle that's being used to fast track. And he did mention that some sports facilities will be incorporated into the Big Push, which obviously should come as good news for us.
Yeah, of course. So, for example, in the Big Push, we told that a number of stadia would either be improved upon because, we have all these facilities splashed across the nation. Many of them have deteriorated. You go to the Coco Stadium right now and it's a maize farm, So, as part of the Big Push, I know quite a number of stadia are going to be built, but I'm looking beyond the provision of these stadia, which fundamentally would be for football. I'm looking at sports halls, the creation of hockey pitches, the creation of athletic tracks. Until we get there, and I get very, very upset when our athletes struggle with the meager resources and lack of facilities, go on the international stage, and when they are unable to compete with their international counterparts,
we criticize.
We still criticize. I get shocked and I get amazed. I remember for the 2012 Olympic Games, which I was privileged to watch, my very, very good friend, then Deputy Sports Minister, just before the competition started, decided that whoever won gold would be rewarded with $50,000. And I was very, very harsh against him. I'm sorry, but I must have offended him. But I was very, 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 very irritated because he knew there was no preparation. Vida knew who had used her own resources to prepare for the games, was looking for assistance from the state. We denied her that assistance. Athletes prepared on their own with their meager resources. And that shabby preparation at the Olympic level. And I was wondering whether people understand what it means to go and win medals at the Olympic level. It's a preparation spanning a period of 6 intensive years, before you even think of going to win a medal. And said, if you go to win it, and I knew nobody's going to win gold, not even to qualify for the next stage of the competition. So our attitude is being awful, and we still pretend to be developing and promoting sports in this country. The only reason football is doing well is because almost everybody plays football. On any pitch, anybody can play football. And then over the period, now there's opportunity for them to travel outside. They join elite clubs. They benefit from their elite facilities. And then the national team poaches them. It's the only reason we're able to compete at the highest level with other teams. But for the other disciplines, I'm sorry, we must as a nation decide whether we want to do recreational sports or want to be very, very professional and to compete favorably at the international level with the serious nations of the world. Until we get to that level, we should stop the hypocrisy of expecting so much from our athletes who go out there and perform. And there's a reason, for example, a team like the 4x100 team, Ghana's recent World Athletics Championship, needs loads of commendation and laudation, because even with the bigger resources and training on their own, they could even run in the final. Never mind they never won. That is not the issue. They cannot win. It's not possible. What it takes to win is not there. We are not practicing it. And I'm saying that we cut out the hypocrisy. We are just joking in this country.
Let's talk about the platform of the Swag Awards now, because at the end of the day, and after all of these inadequacies, the body that you lead still would sit back, look through, do a lot of thorough analysis, and determine who was tops, in each discipline over a sporting year in review. We're at year number 50, and you must be excited that you happen to be leading. It goes with you forever.
I'm very excited, but I do not take the credit alone. From our forebears and from a team of dedicated executives and the body as a whole, But as you rightly pointed out, the reason I'm very, very excited about the Swag Awards is that season after season, these hard-working sportsmen and sportswomen look up to the Swag Night to have smiles on their faces. They go through a lot of toil, a lot of neglect throughout the year. Nobody recognizes them, and all emphasis is on the Black Stars. And that is not to say we shouldn't pay attention to the Black Stars. It's the passion of the nation. And so I can understand. But the point I'm making is that the other athletes need some form of recognition, put smiles on their faces, and the Swag Night is the only platform where they look up to season after season. So for example, but for the Swag Night, the best table tennis player of the year, nobody even knows him. The best taekwondo player or weightlifter, nobody knows him. It's not about money. It's about being recognized. And I feel very, very passionate about that. And that is the reason I give a lot of credit to our forebears who had that vision and that dream, because it's about selflessness. And I talk about selflessness within the context that this is not our core mandate as sports journalists. As sports journalists, we report sporting events, we inform, we educate. It is not our responsibility to honor sportsmen and sportswomen. But out of that sense of selflessness and commitment to these hard-working, tireless sportsmen and sportswomen, we go through the ritual, yearly ritual, of going around looking for money to organize the event and to put smiles on their faces. They don't come on that night to look for money. They come to look for just to be appreciated as people who have toiled for this nation. And I'm very, very, very passionate about that. And it's something that we cannot stop. We go through a lot of torture, to organize the event. Because as you know, SWAG is a non-profit organization, a group of journalists who are not wealthy. And it's a reason I give a lot of credit to our sponsors, but for who it's absolutely impossible to organize the night. So we appeal to individuals, we appeal to the corporate world who come to our aid to put smiles on the faces of these sportsmen and sportswomen. It's something that should never end. And I make a passionate appeal to the state to partner us as we recognize the efforts of these sportsmen and sportswomen.
And this advocacy will be very well placed and very well timed, because His Excellency the President will be the guest of honor. Of course, the AIPS President Gianni Mello will also be there.
I am very, very excited also about the fact that His Excellency, the President of the land, the affable, the venerable gentleman Mahama has decided and agreed to grace the occasion. He loves sports. And
one of his sons now is very thick in the space. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And interestingly, Sharaf is collaborating with Matchroom Promotions to put together the December 20 bouts at the University of Ghana Stadium.
He loves sports. I remember on one occasion, just before I come back to His Excellency, I commentated on a match at Accra Stadium between the Black Stars and locally assembled team. At that time, I didn't know Sheriff, but
Sharaf, you mean?
Sharaf.
Yeah.
I saw him play for the Black Stars. He's always loved sport, and he's interested in the way he shifted to boxing. And we're looking forward to that world title fight. So
I'm told. I'm told that there's this one on December 20, and then there's one in February, which is supposed to be a Rumble in the Jungle one in terms of global significance.
Right. That's right.
But then you realize, so Anthony Joshua is on one side, and then Tyson Fury, but Tyson Fury doesn't want to come out of retirement. Maybe we need to get a whole delegation to go and...
He has said he's achieved everything, and he was fighting.
On a lighter side, your General Secretary, our General Secretary, Charles Osei-Sibe, has very good negotiation skills. I mean, when he became the Africa president for arm wrestling, I got to know that he does very well with negotiation. Maybe we should send him to Tyson Fury in the UK too.
He would take it up. Sometimes some of these boxers also play games with us.
Exactly.
To up the stakes.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to come out of retirement. We heard this a number of times from them. They always come back when the money is right. He has said he doesn't want to come back because he was boxing because of money. He has enough of that. How much is enough is the question.
Yeah.
If he's properly baited, I'm sure he'll come out of retirement and we'll have that Rumble in the Jungle here in Ghana. But as I was talking about, I really, really, really thank His Excellency, the President of the land, for agreeing to grace the 50th Golden Jubilee celebration of our association. It's wonderful because last season, at a very, very short notice, at the beginning of the season, short notice, we approached him and he agreed to grace the occasion. On that very day, he had to, I think, travel out of the country, but he was gracious enough to send his second in command,
the Vice President,
Excellency the Vice President, to grace the occasion. I was very, very excited. And at very short notice, when we contacted him, he quickly, gleefully agreed to come and grace the occasion. So we're looking forward to that. I'm sure the sportsmen and sportswomen and whoever gets the privilege of attending the event will be very, very excited to have His Excellency grace the occasion. And for the first time, we're bringing the AIPS President, Gianni Mello, who has also agreed to come. Not just that, also a number of the presidents of the other African associations have also agreed to come. So, God willing, we're going to have a big event. But I think what is going to be a bit different from the other events is the fact that because it's a Golden Jubilee, we have decided to honor distinguished sportsmen and sportswomen spanning over the last 50 years. So the great Azuma Nelson
obviously
will be a massive personality on the night. Don't forget Azuma.
And before him was DK Poison, who's still alive.
Absolutely. Because Azuma Nelson won the Swag Personality of the Year award on 7 consecutive occasions.
Wow.
Don't forget.
That's a record.
It's unrivaled. Don't forget, he had ruled the world for
10 years.
For a decade.
Yeah.
And every single year he was crowned as the Sports Personality of the Year until Swag decided to, in quote, retire him and make him a patron of Swag. So he's our patron. So, for example, on the night, he's going to be recognized. And the likes of the maestro, Abidi Pele, who celebrates his birthday today, who won the Africa Best Footballer on 3 different occasions. It's unbelievable what Abidi Pele has done for Ghana football. Unparalleled. He will be crowned, he will be celebrated on the night, as well as Nathaniel Yeboah.
Great.
The likes of Mike Lysian, the likes of Kodjo Samoa. Don't forget, people forget, Dede Ayew is Ghana's most capped player. That is unbelievable. Over 100 and close to 115 caps. So he'll be honored on the night. And so it's quite unique from the previous ceremonies. And I think it's important to bring all these on board. The likes of Asamoah Gyan, who goes into our records as the one with the most goals.
Yeah, and it's refreshing as well that the Ghana Football Association have decided to, to honor him for this as well.
Also, a personality like Margaret Simpson, absolutely incredible, heptathlete, season after season, ruled not just Africa.
The winning season is back, but
ventured into the world. He was winning titles at the Commonwealth, at the Olympics. So we are very, very excited about the fact that such personalities.
That's a very interesting one, because you're going back into, you're thinking about names like Rex Broby, one time Africa's fastest man. You're thinking about the Oko Addis. It just brings you the realization that we've written a pretty good story. Modest in our ways as well, but written a pretty good and modest story across board.
Yeah, personalities like
Ignatius
Geza. What is remarkable about these athletes is the fact that in the midst of little, they're able to compete with athletes on the international scene. For me, that is what makes it exciting, and it will be so suicidal not to recognize their efforts. I can imagine if they had total backing and had the resources, what they could achieve on the international scene. But even in the absence of that, they've succeeded in bringing smiles to us in the midst of so much poverty. With those mega resources, they still succeeded in hoisting the proud national flag, season after season, to make all of us proud. And I think that it behoves on us as a nation to recognize the efforts of these extraordinary sportsmen and sportswomen.
Amazing. And final of finals.
And honor the best to inspire the rest.